The following day was Sunday. Liza, when she was dressing herself in the morning, felt the hardness of fate and the impossibility of eating one's cake and having it. She wished she had reserved her new dress, and had still before her the sensation of a first appearance in it. With a sigh, she put on her ordinary everyday working dress, and proceeded to get the breakfast ready for her mother, who had been out late the previous night, celebrating the new arrivals in the street, and had the rheumatics this morning. "Ooh, my head," she was saying, as she pressed her hands on each side of her forehead. "I've got the neuralgy again. What shall I do? I dunno how it is, but it always comes on Sunday mornings. Ooh, and my rheumatics. They give me such a doin' in the night." "You'd better go to the orspital, mother." "Not I," answered the worthy lady, with great decision. "You as a dozen young chaps messin' you about and lookin' at yer, and then they tells yer to leave off beer and spirits. Well, what I says I can't do anything without my glass of beer." She thumped her pillow to emphasize the statement. "What with the work I have to do, lookin' after you and the cookin' and gettin' everything ready and doin' all the 'ousework and goin' out charing besides. Well, I says, if I don't have a drop of beer, I says, ter pull me together, I should be under the turf in no time." She munched her bread and butter and drank her tea. "When you've done breakfast, Liza," she said, "you can give the grate a cleanin' and my boots to do with a bit of polishin'. Miss Tyke in the next 'ouse, I'll give yer some blackin'." She remained silent for a bit, then said, "I don't think I shall get up ter-day, Liza. My rheumatics is bad. You can put the room straight and cook the dinner." "All right, mother, you stay where you are and I'll do everything for yer." "Well, it's only what yer ought to do, considerin' all the trouble you've been ter me when you was young, and considerin' that when you was born the doctor thought I never should get through it. What 'ave you done with your week's money, Liza?" "Oh, I've put it away," answered Liza quietly. "Where?" asked her mother. "Where it'll be safe." "Where's that?" Liza was driven into a corner. "Why do you want ter know?" she asked. "Why shouldn't I know? Do you think I want ter steal it from yer?" "Nah, not that." "Well, why won't you tell me?" "Oh, a thing's safer when only one person knows where it is." This was a very discreet remark, but it set Mrs. Kemp in a whirlwind of passion. She raised herself and sat up in the bed, flourishing her clenched fist at her daughter. "I know what yer mean, you—" Her language was emphatic, her epithets picturesque, but too forcible for reproduction. "You think I'd steal it," she went on. "I know yer. Do yer think I'd go and take yer dirty money?" "Well, mother," said Liza, "when I've told yer before, the money's perspired like." "What do yer mean?" "It got less." "Well, I can't help that, can I? Anyone can come in here and take the money." "If it's hidden away, they can't, can they, mother?" said Liza. Mrs. Kemp shook her fist. "You dirty slut, you," she said. "You think I take your money? Why, you ought to give it to me every week instead of saving it up and spending it on all sorts of muck, while I have to grind my very bones down to keep yer. You know, mother, if I didn't have a little bit saved up, we should be rather short when you're down in your luck." Mrs. Kemp's money always ran out on Tuesday, and Liza had to keep things going till the following Saturday. "Oh, don't talk ter me," proceeded Mrs. Kemp. "When I was a girl, I give all my money ter my mother. She never had ter ask me for nothin'. On Saturday, when I come 'ome with my wages, I give it her every farthin'. That's what a daughter ought ter do. I can say this for myself. I behaved by my mother like a gal should. None of your prodigal sons for me. She didn't have ter ask me for 3 ter get a drop of beer." Liza was wise in her generation. She held her tongue and put on her hat. "Now you're going at and leaving me. I don't know what you get up to in the street with all those men. No good, I'll be bound. And 'ere am I, left alone, and I might die for all you care." In her sorrow at herself, the old lady began to cry, and Liza slipped out of the room and into the street. Leaning against the wall of the opposite house was Tom. He came towards her. "Aloha! she said as she saw him. What are you doing here? I was waiting for you to come out, Liza, he answered. She looked at him quickly. I ain't coming out with yer today, if that's what yer mean, she said. I never thought of arsking yer, Liza, after what you said ter me last night. His voice was a little sad, and she felt so sorry for him. But yer did want ter speak ter me, didn't yer, Tom? She said more gently. You've got a day off tomorrow, ain't yer? Bank holiday, yes, why? Why, 'cause they've got a drag startin' from the Red Lion that's goin' down to Chingford for the day, and I'm goin'. Yes, she said. He looked at her doubtfully. Will yer come too, Liza? It'll be a regular beano. There's only goin' ter be people in the street, eh, Liza? Nah, I can't. Why not? I ain't got I ain't got the oof dish. I mean, won't yer come with me? Nah, Tom, thank yer, I can't do that neither. Yer might as well, Liza, it wouldn't hurt yer. Nah, it wouldn't be right like. I can't come out wit yer and then mean nothin'. It would be doin' yer out of an outing. I don't see why, he said, very crestfallen. I can't go on keepin' company with you after what I said last night. I I shan't enjoy it a bit without you, Liza. You get somebody else, Tom. You'll do without me all right. She nodded to him and walked up the street to the house of her friend Sally. Having arrived in front of it, she put her hands to her mouth in trumpet form and shouted, I, Sally. A couple of fellows standing by copied her. I, Sally. Garn, said Liza, looking round at them. Sally did not appear, and she repeated her call. The men imitated her, and half a dozen took it up, so that there was enough noise to wake the 7 sleepers. I, Sally. A head was put out of a top window, and Liza, taking off her hat, waved it, crying, Come on down, Sally. All right, old gal, shouted the other, I'm comin'. So's Christmas, was Liza's repartee. There was a clatter down the stairs, and Sally, rushing through the passage, threw herself onto her friend. They began fooling, in reminiscence of a melodrama they had lately seen together. Oh, my darlin' duck, said Liza, kissing her and pressing her with affected rapture to her bosom. My sweetest sweet, replied Sally, copying her. And how does your ladyship ter-day? Oh, with immense languor. Fust class. And is your royal highness quite well? I deeply regret, answered Liza, but my royal highness has got the collie wobbles. Sally was a small, thin girl with sandy hair and blue eyes and a very freckled complexion. She had an enormous mouth with terrible square teeth set wide apart, which looked as if they could masticate an iron bar. She was dressed like Liza in a shortish black skirt and an old-fashioned bodice, green and gray and yellow with age. Her sleeves were tucked up to the elbow, and she wore a singularly dirty apron that had once been white. What have you got your hair in them things for? Asked Liza, pointing to the curl papers. Goin' out with the young man ter-day. No, I'm going to stay 'ere all day. What for, then? Why, 'Arry's going ter take me ter Chingford termorrer. Oh, in the Red Lion break? Yes. Are you goin'? Nah. Not? Well, why don't you get round Tom? 'E'll take yer, and jolly glad 'e'll be too. 'E arst me to go with 'im, but I wouldn't. Swap me bob, why not? I ain't keepin' company with him. Yer might have gone with him all the same. Nah, you're goin' with 'Arry, aren't yer? Yes. And you're goin' to 'ave him? Right again. Well, I couldn't go with Tom and then throw him over. Well, you are a mug. The two girls had strolled down towards the Westminster Bridge Road, and Sally, meeting her young man, had gone to him. Liza walked back, wishing to get home in time to cook the dinner. But she went slowly, for she knew every dweller in the street, and as she passed the groups sitting at their doors as on the previous evening, but this time mostly engaged in peeling potatoes or shelling peas, she stopped and had a little chat. Everyone liked her, and was glad to have her company. Good old Liza, they would say as she left them. She's a rare good sort, ain't she? She asked after the aches and pains of all the old people, and delicately inquired after the babies, past and future. The children hung onto her skirts and asked her to play with them, and she would hold one end of the rope while tiny little ragged girls skipped, invariably entangling themselves after 2 jumps. She had nearly reached home when she heard a voice cry, "Mornin'!" She looked round and recognized the man whom Tom had told her was called Jim Blakeston. He was sitting on a stool at the door of one of the houses, playing with 2 young children, to whom he was giving rides on his knee. She remembered his heavy brown beard from the day before, and she had also an impression of great size. She noticed this morning that he was, in fact, a big man, tall and broad, and she saw besides that he had large masculine features and pleasant brown eyes. She supposed him to be about 40. "Mornin'," he said again, as she stopped and looked at him. "Well, you needn't look as if I was going to eat you up, 'cause I ain't," he said. "Ooh, are you? I'm not afraid of yer. What are yer so bloomin' red about?" he asked pointedly. "Well, I'm not. You ain't shirty 'cause I kissed yer last night." "I'm not shirty, but it was pretty cool, considering like as I didn't know yer." "Well, you run into my arms." "That I didn't. You run it and caught me." "And kissed yer before you could say Jack Robinson." He laughed at the thought. "Well, Liza," he went on, "seein' as 'ow I kissed yer against yer will, the best thing you can do ter make it up is to kiss me not against yer will." "Me?" said Liza, looking at him open-mouthed. "Well, you are a pill." The children began to clamor for the riding, which had been discontinued on Liza's approach. "Are them your kids?" she asked. "Yes, them's 2 on 'em." "'Ow many 'ave yer got?" "5. The eldest gal's 15, and the next one who's a boy 12, and then there are these 2 and baby." "Well, you've got enough for your money." "Too many for me, and more comin'." "Ah, well," said Liza, laughing, "that's your fault, ain't it?" Then she bade him good morning and strolled off. He watched her as she went, and saw half a dozen little boys surround her and beg her to join them in their game of cricket. They caught hold of her arms and skirts and pulled her to their pitch. "No, I can't," she said, trying to disengage herself. "I've got the dinner ter cook." "Dinner ter cook?" shouted one small boy. "Why, they always cooks the cat's meat at the shop." "You little so-and-so," said Liza, somewhat inelegantly, making a dash at him. He dodged her and gave a whoop. Then turning, he caught her round the legs, and another boy catching hold of her round the neck, they dragged her down, and all 3 struggled on the ground, rolling over and over. The other boys threw themselves on the top, so that there was a great heap of legs and arms and heads waving and bobbing up and down. Liza extricated herself with some difficulty, and taking off her hat, she began cuffing the boys with it, using all the time the most lively expressions. Then, having cleared the field, she retired victorious into her own house and began cooking the dinner. Chapter 4. Bank holiday was a beautiful day. The cloudless sky threatened a stifling heat for noontide, but early in the morning, when Liza got out of bed and threw open the window, it was fresh and cool. She dressed herself, wondering how she should spend her day. She thought of Sally going off to Chingford with her lover, and of herself remaining alone in the dull street with half the people away. She almost wished it were an ordinary workday, and that there were no such things as bank holidays. And it seemed to be a little like 2 Sundays running, but with the second rather worse than the first. Her mother was still sleeping, and she was in no great hurry about getting the breakfast, but stood quietly looking out of the window at the house opposite. In a little while she saw Sally coming along. She was arrayed in purple and fine linen, a very smart red dress, trimmed with velveteen, and a tremendous hat covered with feathers. She had reaped the benefit of keeping her hair in curl papers since Saturday, and her sandy fringe stretched from ear to ear. She was in enormous spirits. "Hullo, Eliza," she called as soon as she saw her at the window. Liza looked at her a little enviously. "Hulloa," she answered quietly. "I'm just going to the Red Lion to meet Airy." "At what time do you start?" The break leaves at 8:30 sharp. Why, it's only 8. It's only just struck at the church. 'Arry won't be there yet, will he? Oh, he's sure to be early. I couldn't wait. I've been waiting about since 6:30. I've been up since 5 this morning. Since 5? What have you been doing? Dressing myself and doing my hair. I woke up so early. I've been dreaming all the night about it. I simply couldn't sleep. Well, you are a caution, said Liza. Bust it, I don't go on the spree every day. Oh, I do hope I shall enjoy myself. Why, you simply don't know where you are, said Liza, a little crossly. Don't you wish you was comin', Liza? Asked Sally. Nah, I could if I liked, but I don't want ter. You are a cough drop, that's all I can say. Catch me refusin' when I have the chanst. Well, it's done now. I ain't got the chanst any more. Liza said this with just a little regret in her voice. Come on down to the Red Lion, Liza, and see us off, said Sally. No, I'm damned if I do, answered Liza with some warmth. You might as well. Perhaps 'Arry won't be there, and you can keep me company till he comes, and you can see the horses. Liza was really very anxious to see the break and the horses and the people going, but she hesitated a little longer. Sally asked her once again, then she said, All right, I'll come with yer, and wait till the bloomin' old thing starts. She did not trouble to put on a hat, but just walked out as she was, and accompanied Sally to the public house which was getting up the expedition. Although there was still nearly half an hour to wait, the break was drawn up before the main entrance. It was large and long, with seats arranged crosswise so that 4 people could sit on each, and it was drawn by 2 powerful horses, whose harness the coachman was now examining. Sally was not the first on the scene, for already half a dozen people had taken their places, but Harry had not yet arrived. The 2 girls stood by the public door, looking at the preparations. Huge baskets full of food were brought out and stowed away. Cases of beer were hoisted up and put in every possible place, under the seats, under the driver's legs, and even beneath the brake. As more people came up, Sally began to get excited about Harry's non-appearance. I say, I wish he'd come, she said. He is late. Then she looked up and down the Westminster Bridge Road to see if he was in view. Suppose he don't turn up, I will give it him when he comes for keeping me waitin' like this. Why, there's a quarter of an hour yet, said Liza, who saw nothing at all to get excited about. At last Sally saw her lover and rushed off to meet him. Liza was left alone, rather disconsolate at all this bustle and preparation. She was not sorry that she had refused Tom's invitation, but she did wish that she had conscientiously been able to accept it. Sally and her friend came up, attired in his Sunday best. He was a fit match for his lady love. He wore a shirt and collar, unusual luxuries, and be carried under his arm a concertina to make things merry on the way. Ain't you goin', Liza? He asked in surprise at seeing her without a hat and with her apron on. Nah, said Sally. Ain't she a soft? Tom said he'd take her, and she wouldn't. Well, I'm dashed. Then they climbed the ladder and took their seats, so that Liza was left alone again. More people had come along, and the brake was nearly full. Liza knew them all, but they were too busy taking their places to talk to her. At last Tom came. He saw her standing there and went up to her. Won't yer change your mind, Liza, and come along with us? Nah, Tom, I told you I wouldn't. It's not right like. She felt she must repeat that to herself often. I shan't enjoy it a bit without you, he said. Well, I can't help it, she answered, somewhat sullenly. At that moment, a man came out of the public house with a horn in his hand. Her heart gave a great jump, for if there was anything she adored, it was to drive along to the tootling of a horn. She really she really felt it was very hard lines that she must stay at home when all these people were going to have such a fine time, and they were all so merry, and she could picture to herself so well the delights of the drive and the picnic. She felt very much inclined to cry, but she mustn't go, and she wouldn't go. She repeated that to herself twice as the trumpeter gave a preliminary tootle. 2 more people hurried along, and when they came near, Liza saw that they were Jim Blakeston, and a woman whom she supposed to be his wife. Are you comin', Liza? Jim said to her. No, she answered. I didn't know you was goin'. I wish you was comin', he replied. We shall have a game. She could only just keep back the sobs, she so wished she were going. It did seem hard that she must remain behind, and all because she wasn't going to marry Tom. After all, she didn't see why that should prevent her. There really was no need to refuse for that. She began to think she had acted foolishly. It didn't do anyone any good that she refused to go with Tom, and no one thought it anything specially fine that she should renounce her pleasure. Sally merely thought her a fool. Tom was standing by her side, silent, and looking disappointed and rather unhappy. Jim said to her in a low voice, "I am sorry you're not coming." It was too much. She did want to go so badly, and she really couldn't resist any longer. If Tom would only ask her once more, and if she could only change her mind reasonably and decently, she would accept. But he stood silent, and she had to speak herself. It was very undignified. "You know, Tom," she said, "I don't want to spoil your day." "Well, I don't think I shall go alone. It'd be so precious slow." Supposing he didn't ask her again, what should she do? She looked up at the clock on the front of the pub and noticed that it only wanted 5 minutes to the half hour. How terrible it would be if the break started and he didn't ask her. Her heart beat violently against her chest, and in her agitation she fumbled with the corner of her apron. "Well, what can I do, Tom dear?" "Why, come with me, of course." "Oh, Liza, do say yes." She had got the offer again, and it only wanted a little seemly hesitation, and the thing was done. "I should like to, Tom," she said, "but you'd think it'd be all right?" "Yes, of course it would. Come on, Liza." In his eagerness he clasped her hand. "Well," she remarked, looking down, "if it'd spoil your holiday—" "I won't go if you don't. Swap me bob, I won't," he answered. "Well, if I come, it won't mean that I'm keepin' company with you." "Nah, it won't mean anything you don't like." "All right," she said. "You'll come?" He could hardly believe her. "Yes," she answered, smiling all over her face. "You're a good sort, Liza, I say. 'Arry, Liza's comin'," he shouted. "Liza? 'Ooray!" shouted Harry. "Sat right, Liza," called Sally. And Liza, feeling quite joyful and light of heart, called back, "Yes." "'Ooray!" shouted Sally in answer. "That's right, Liza," called Jim, and he smiled pleasantly as she looked at him. "There's just room for you two 'ere," said Harry, pointing to the vacant places by his side. "All right," said Tom. "I must just go and get a 'at and tell mother," said Liza. "There's just 3 minutes. Be quick," answered Tom, and as she scampered off as hard as she could go, he shouted to the coachman, "Old Ard, there's another passenger comin' in a minute." "All right, old cock," answered the coachman. "No 'urry." Liza rushed into the room and called to her mother, who was still asleep. "Mother, mother, I'm going to Chingford." Then, tearing off her old dress, she slipped into her gorgeous violet one. She kicked off her old ragged shoes and put on her new boots. She brushed her hair down and rapidly gave her fringe a twirl and a twist. It was luckily still moderately in curl from the previous Saturday. And putting on her black hat with all the feathers, she rushed along the street and, scrambling up the brake steps, fell panting on Tom's lap. The coachman cracked his whip, the trumpeter tootled his horn, and with a cry and a cheer from the occupants, the brake clattered down the road.